Music can very much make or break a game. The OST or original soundtrack is something people like myself very frequently bring up when reviewing a game, or really any other piece of media, like a show or a movie. I've always said that music is the most intimate form of art, because I don't think there's any other human-made thing that is able to evoke nearly as much emotion as music. Through just sounds, music has the ability to completely change the way a person is feeling at a given moment. So when we're talking about the horror genre, music is arguably one of the most important elements to take into account for a quality experience. The feeling of terror, the feeling of dread, can easily be exacerbated or even fully created merely from having the right music in the right place. All of that is what I would normally talk about when talking about music in horror games. Today I'm not talking about any of that. I fooled you, lol, XD even. Today I want to talk about when songs appear in indie horror games. Now, technically, an ambient track that plays during a sequence in a game is a song, but hopefully you understand the difference when I mean song. I'm talking a proper musical number with a fully fleshed out song, with proper writing, vocals, a hook, that kind of thing. To use a mainstream example so I don't lose you before I start exclusively talking about indie titles, think of the Herald of Darkness sequence from Alan Wake 2. Or to make this very easy to understand, think of the difference between an instrumental you hear in the background of a platformer and a song you would hear from an artist on the radio. The latter is the type of thing I want to talk about today. Spoilers for every single game on screen, by the way. Let's start off with the game that gave me this idea in the first place.
Did I earn your trust at Indigo Park?
Despite its simplicity, Indigo Park is a mascot horror game that is just oozing with charm all throughout. And a big part of what makes this game more memorable than a lot of games in the genre is the soundtrack. The OST is full of fun and bubbly music, but what we will be focusing on today is the song that plays at the end of the game. This song is from the perspective of the best character in all of fiction, Rambley the raccoon, who also has a lot of screen time in the game. Borderline, he's the focus. In this track, Rambley, being the most perfect little guide possible, wants you to leave a review of your experience at the park. Hence the name, Rambley Review. I love Rambley with all my heart, and this song is ridiculously cute. Now, it's possible that Unique Geese will choose violence by making Rambley evil in the future of the game, but I genuinely really like that Rambley isn't some kind of twist villain as of now. I feel like that trope is so overdone by this point that not doing it is actually a more interesting direction. But getting back to the point, since Rambley is just an adorable little guy, this song just gives me a major boost of serotonin when I hear it. This song does a pretty perfect job at summing up Rambley's character. All Rambley wants is to make sure that you have a good time, and that he's able to make Indigo Park an enjoyable experience, after years of not being able to do so. And that's basically all this song is about. He's apologetic for not fully delivering on that experience and needing your help, but that doesn't change the fact that he needs and wants you to stay. I really like Rambley, he is the best boy. The song is also just a bop. Unique Geese, mostly through his connections in the Friday Night Funkin' scene, got a lot of amazing musicians on this game. The percussion is very clicky, the aesthetic is very retro, the writing is very catchy. Given that Indigo Park is formulaically very similar to a lot of games in the genre, I think what carries it a lot and what makes it significantly more special is how much personality there is all over it. And ending the game with this song was such a perfect thing to leave the player with. It leaves everyone excited to see more, with an understanding that there is a sincere effort here to make something memorable. Duck Season is a ridiculously goated indie horror game designed for VR based on the famous NES game Duck Hunt. One of these days I'll have to make a whole video about this game because it's a top 10 indie horror game in my book. It's fun, it's stylistic, it's pretty scary, and its soundtrack is great. Right now I'll be talking about the track Meaning of Fear, which plays during the first phase of the final boss of the game. This track goes so hard, it's actually insane. The guitar riff will literally never leave your head once you've heard it, the loud and powerful drums enhance the moment this track plays during, and the vocals are really sick. I love that this track is essentially a short but badass 80s rock song. Given that the premise and concept of this game is based on Duck Hunt from the early 80s, the aesthetic of this game is essentially just life in the 80s but stylized, so the fact that this track displays and embraces the same aesthetic and era is just really cool. It's also just so cool to hear this during the boss fight for the first time. It really amplifies the dramatic feeling, while also maintaining a somewhat silly 80s slasher-esque style. This moment isn't overly serious or scary for that matter, but it's intense and epic. The drums in particular and the raspy vocals create a fun, vibrant, but intimidating atmosphere for a dramatic conclusion to an amazing game. Before we get back to talking about songs that play in their entirety in their respective games, I want to take a moment to talk about a few examples that would probably be commented on if I don't mention them, but aren't major sequences. One of those being during the absolute banger of a scene in the third Banban game, where you're in a car with the gang after Stinger Flynn drugs you, Banban makes the executive decision to turn on some tunes. On this fateful day in Banban World, the radio just so happens to play Rivals by hit nerdcore artist Rocket Music. This is an original song made for Garten of Banban 3, and it sure is totally okay. I really could not have a strong opinion on this song if I tried. At least that's what I would be saying if this song didn't haunt my very existence. The chorus of this song just so happens to say my name, and that is something I have been unable to escape for over a year now. The pain is constant, and I cannot take it anymore. Sleep Well is a song that CG5 made in collaboration with Mob Entertainment, and it made its debut in Poppy Playtime Chapter 3. If you navigate around one of the buildings in Playcare, you will come across a catnap plushie that sings the distorted chorus of this song. My headcanon is that CG5 was a person in the Poppy Playtime universe, and his corrupted soul is stuck in this squishy cat-shaped body for eternity, only able to painfully regurgitate part of the last song he ever wrote. I'm definitely a CG5 criticizer. I think he is a very skilled musician, but for whatever reason, he just frequently decides to make music that very much does not live up to his actual abilities. However, I do think Sleep Well is pretty goddamn good. I absolutely adore the way it interpolates the title screen music from the first two chapters of the game. The goofy-ah high-pitched vocals that scream freedom are surprisingly catchy, and the writing is pretty stellar as far as this side of the nerdcore scene goes. And of course, this Easter egg is really cute, and a fun surprise if you manage to find it yourself. Hand in hand through each endeavor. KinitoPET blew up at the start of this year for being a digital horror nightmare that literally doxes you.
And I will just grab it for you.
Where is my location? Oh fuck, it did dox me.
That should be a little more accurate.
Oh my god, it doxed me.
It is fire. This was actually a really exciting rise for me to see because I played KinitoPET very shortly after its release when it only had 30 reviews on Steam. So it's cool to see how big it was able to get. I absolutely love KinitoPET. I am amazed by what this game is able to pull off. I went into this game expecting literally nothing of quality, and it ended up becoming one of my all-time favorites in the genre. And one of the many things that made this game memorable for me was the song that plays during the credits. Basically, KinitoPET wants to be your bestest buddy in the whole wide world, and to show you that, he makes a world full of your favorite things, and, naturally of course, traps you with him forever, and sings a fucking song about it. The first and most obvious element of this track that I want to talk about is the use of Kinito's voice. The fact that the producer of this track was able to make this Bonzi buddy-ass work in this song is so cool to me. The voice also makes it surprisingly more disturbing. In fact, that's what I really love about this song. It's a surprisingly dark and twisted piece of work. The instrumental is very simplistic, and although it has a pretty bouncy-sounding melody, it's surprisingly slow-paced and low-pitched. The repetitive, bouncy, dark beat makes me feel like I'm going through an episode of Psychosis as it goes on. The voice being the goofy Microsoft text-to-speech voice is a constant reminder that the character is not human, and I actually find that much more eerie as well, because it's as if an otherworldly creature is the one holding you hostage. The tone and concept of this entire song is also simply creepy. Kinito, at least in the song itself, isn't portrayed as a monster or a menace. He just wants you to stay with him and be his friend. Although he has undoubtedly scared the shit out of you and freaks out if you try to avoid staying with him, when you really take a look at his actions, he does what he thinks you would like in an effort to befriend you. And this whole song is about the adventures you, the player, and Kinito will have together, in this world that he built for you. This whole song is about KinitoPET simply wanting you to stay with him forever in this world he had designed for you. Hang on, wait a second. I love Doki Doki Literature Club. You have no idea how much I love Doki Doki Literature Club. You will never understand how much I love Doki Doki Literature Club. DDLC is very well known for its OST. There are some great cute tracks that do an excellent job at representing the genre that the game disguises itself as. There's some sick and twisted darker tracks used for the game's shocking horror-focused moments, and of course, it ends with a song from the perspective of the character Monika. I love everything about this song. I adore the way this is a rendition of the game's main theme that the player has become so familiar with by the end of the game. It makes this track feel very conclusive. After all the craziness that is this game, this is the final piece of it all, and a representation of the journey that you just went on with all these characters. The writing on this song is legitimately gorgeous, whether or not you take into account the source material or the fact that it's from a video game. If you take this song at face value and ignore what it means specifically to the sentient character Monika, this is just a tragic love song from the perspective of a hopeless romantic that's full of emotion. There are very simple but expressive metaphors and phrases that pretty perfectly portray a person and their love for another, in a situation where that love will never be reciprocated. But obviously, with the context of the game and it being from the perspective of this character, it's actually much more interesting than that, when you take into account that Monika is a sentient character in a video game that has completely fucked with the world that she inhabits, causing the deaths of, albeit technically fictional characters, in order to keep you captive forever. Yeah, it's pretty dark. But where I like KinitoPET's version of this idea for its lack of humanity on display, the reason I like this one just as much or more is for the opposite reason. In canon, I guess you could say, Monika is pretty much a person, like an actual person, who has no connection to any other real person aside from the player, and in the world she's stuck within, she never gets the opportunity to share a moment with who she knows is the only other real person. I love how this song is an expression of that, and that it concludes with the acceptance of that situation. It's just a really satisfying conclusion to a beautiful and twisted experience. And I need to mention just how much I love the vocal performance. I care so deeply about these characters and this world that I am very picky with how they are depicted. A lot of people bring up Doki Doki these days when discussing the next indie horror game to get adapted into a movie or show, and I always say in my head that I don't want that to happen, because if they don't sound or behave exactly how I believe they should, I'd have a mental breakdown. I have a very unhealthy relationship with this game. Anyway, what I'm saying is that this performance done by Jillian Ashcraft, who has seemingly dropped off the face of the earth since then, is so unbelievably perfect for Monika as a character. It's exactly what it should have been. I have so much to say about this game, and I love talking about this game, and I will definitely be talking about it more in the future. Before we go, I just want to quickly talk about a few random tracks from certain games that aren't actually fitting for the theme of the video, but I want to talk about them because I like them, and I won't really get the chance to do so in the future. Electro Swing from Flumpties 3 is such a ridiculous banger and an amazing fit for the sequence it's a part of. I love that the music for the final boss of this parody horror series embraces the satirical and silly nature of the game, and of course, it's an absolute banger. Similarly, Tama Terrors from Playtime with Percy is such a thrilling theme for a final boss. I love the way it evolves over its 8-minute runtime for each phase of the boss fight, and I love the integration of Pal's vocals as well. Dark Deception, which has way too good of an OST for the actual quality of the rest of the game, features a horror version of this famous track that I won't attempt to pronounce the name of. Gonna keep it a stack, I just call it the pizza song. And yeah, this spooky upbeat version is fire. And lastly, for this video at least, maybe I'll make a part 2 one day, my pick for my favorite track to appear in a mainline FNAF game is actually just a stock track. You will know it as either the Happiest Day track from FNAF 3 or simply the Bad Ending track. It is a rendition of a piece from the German composer Johannes Brahms. Feel free to roast my pronunciation of that name. I mean this with the utmost sincerity. There are very, very few songs that perfectly represent the feeling of sadness to me on the same level as this one. The feeling of dread and heartbreak and loss this track makes me feel is legitimately so strong. It's so simple, but so unbelievably effective. So in conclusion, I like music